admired retailers, and its competitors knew they had finally met the 800-pound gorilla.
They recognized that Depot was becoming a generic name for home improvement, like Xerox, like Kleenex.
The challenge for us is to continue to get top-line growth.
That growth is, of course, a continuation of what the founders started. Bernie Marcus and Ken Langone still serve on the board. Their friendship is as strong as ever.
The room lights up for me, almost as much as when my wife comes into the room, but the room lights up for me when Bernie comes in the room.
Bernie and Arthur, immensely wealthy men thanks to Home Depot, are both dedicated to giving back to the community. To help revitalize downtown Atlanta, Bernie's donated $200 million for a state-of-the-art aquarium.
You notice the tie? I want everybody to see it. It's a fish tie, okay?
The two co-founders are still friends, despite having clearly divergent interests.
Listen, Arthur's a jock. You know, it's really funny because I'm into fish and Arthur's into the football.
Post Home Depot, Arthur has done just fine. He now owns the Atlanta Falcons, a franchise worth more than $500 million.
Thanks for being here tonight, guys.
True to his old business model, he lowered ticket prices, and it worked.
In this case, you substitute fans for customers, find out what they wanted. We found out they wanted a lower ticket price and parking, being able to tailgate, have a great game day experience, have a more competitive team on the field.
As for the company these two men started in 1978, it's, as always, expanding. Home Depot has conquered Canada, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. And in 2003, it landed its 50th and final state, West Virginia. So what's next? With this company, you never know where it might be headed.
Colonel Sanders cooked his chicken in pressure cookers in less than a third the time it took conventional frying. But that was only the start. Dave wanted to soak up all he could about making it in the restaurant business from the Colonel. The master salesman had found his prized pupil.
I was always inquisitive. It's always fascinated me to find out when people are successful, how do they become successful? What does it take to do it?
Dave Thomas and Colonel Sanders were a match made in heaven. The Colonel had the image, and Dave knew how to promote it.
I told the Colonel, why don't we put your mug on the car? He was driving a white T-Bird. And I said, why don't we put your mug on the Thunderbird? Oh, he says, that'd be too ostentatious. Next sentence, when can we get that done?
Dave would have a hand in developing the buckets and spinning signs that made the Colonel's kindly smile hard to get away from. In 1962, the Colonel and Phil Klaus, Dave's boss, had 4 Kentucky Fried Chicken stores in Columbus, Ohio that were failing, and they were looking for someone to throw with the problem.
My dad made him the offer and talked him into moving to Columbus, Ohio with his family and taking over these businesses that weren't doing that well. He went over there and he started merchandising and running 2-for-1s, and all the things that he had learned here he'd put to use, and he turned it around in short order.
Dave Thomas was finally out on his own and running his own show. It should have been fun.
No, he wasn't having fun. No, he wasn't doing much of anything except going to the stores and, and working. And it was work. I mean, back then it wasn't just mental, it was physical labor. He was cooking. I mean, he'd come home at night smelling like grease. Fried chicken and grease. No, there was no party time.
I can remember days where he'd go into a KFC store and the product wasn't right, and he would grab the tray and throw it right in the garbage and tell the manager, start all over and do it right. If you can't do it right, don't do it at all.
Beneath the cheerful exterior and the engaging smile beat the heart of a fast food warrior.
He really didn't want anyone else to be selling chicken in Columbus, Ohio, other than Kentucky Fried Chicken. He really believed we had the best product and that we ought to have all the sales. And so there were probably 2 other competitors at the time, and I remember Dave being absolutely ecstatic when one of them went out of business in this town. And to see boards on their windows, Dave came and said that we had been successful.
He was nostalgic for one of the few things that had made him happy as a kid, an old-fashioned hamburger made to his own specifications. But he was having trouble coming up with a name for his hamburger stand.
I had the name Old Fashioned, and then one night I went home and I have 4 daughters and a son, and the little redhead was Melinda Lou, and everybody called her Winda, not Wendy, Winda. I don't know, I just looked at her and said, I'm going to call it Wendy's Old Fashioned Hamburgers.
And work was great. The chicken was going out, and the praise and the money were coming in just as fast. 20 years after leaving home to work round the clock, Dave Thomas was an overnight success. Now, with a chance to make a fortune, he sold his stores back to Kentucky Fried Chicken in 1967 and made several $1 million. His new financial independence would let him provide for his family beyond anything he'd even dreamed of as a child.
I thought my big deal in life had been KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, when I sold out to the company and become a millionaire. I thought that was, you know, I wasn't ever going to strike anything that big, but I was wrong.
David once thought that if he ever had $10,000 saved, he wouldn't bother to get up in the morning. He was wrong. With money in the bank and time on his hands, Dave Thomas would find out that most of his hard work was still ahead of him. The first Wendy's opened for business in downtown Columbus, Ohio in November of 1969, and everybody came. It was quickly obvious that Dave Thomas had something.
From the very first day when there were people lined down the street, I knew we had something that was going to be different and better.
The basic surprise is when the store opened, there truly were lines. When they put in the first Wendy's there and got it all worked out, I mean, people were coming. They said, whoops, we got something here.
Every Wendy's hamburger is made from 100% pure fresh beef and patty daily.
Nothing was left to chance in Dave's new place. No detail was too small for his attention. He claimed the square patties were because he didn't like to cut corners. Dave was finally his own boss. He tried to get from other people what he demanded from himself. He never stopped working, and he knew how to do every job better than anyone else.
He has a sixth sense to ask you a question, but he already knows the answer. And he wants to know if you know the answer. So he does that quite a bit with people. I mean, he, especially with me. But I don't call it entrapment, but it's pretty darn close to it.
And work was a full-time job. Wendy's had taken on a life of its own and started to make a place for itself among the McDonald's and Burger Kings. It pioneered the drive-through window, which increased sales by 50%. In the first 6 years, there were 100 Wendy's. Just 1 year later, there were 500.
He's always 3 deals ahead of everybody else. I mean, he's already finished and understands and transferring that situation to people that need to get the job done, but he's already 2 ahead of them. I mean, he's thinking forward.
Dave Thomas was the Pied Piper of hamburgers.
People were saying, oh, Dave, I hear you've got a new hamburger place. I'm going to come and see it. And they would come and he'd sell them a franchise that afternoon. So he said, you can have, you know, Kentucky, or you can have Idaho, or you can have whatever you want.
Come in and relax in our old-fashioned dining room or try our speedy pickup window service.
By 1974, they were getting 500 phone calls a week asking about franchises. But the failure rate for any new restaurant was high. Going national was a sink or swim proposition, and Wendy's was doing a bit of both.
We opened 1 year 500 restaurants, and we really wasn't capable of opening 500 restaurants, but we did it. But it was really important to have them 500 restaurants because that gave us some national recognition that we could go on national TV.
You want a real good hamburger?
Wendy's was opening more stores than McDonald's. In 1975, the company went public, and in 1977, it burst into the national fast food consciousness with a campaign proclaiming hot and juicy hamburgers.